What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. And today, you and I are going to be making a game. Basically, I'm just going to be kind of running through all of the stuff that starts at the beginning of a project, how building out concepts and stuff works, which is a lot of the stuff that I used to do right at the very beginning of this channel. And we're going to kind of go through and build something. We're going to be starting off with the core brief of... Well, hang on. Let me 1 minute, please. Before we get to that, starting out, most of the time, a game design starts with a core brief, which is the overlying concept or the kind of the goal of the design or something in how everything is going to come together. The goal for this one in particular is to examine why not many other games use a similar resource system to the Pokemon TCG. I'm talking about energy attachments. Why do most games run along the same lines as Magic the Gathering, where you as a player have resources that you delegate and that gates how many actions you can take per turn, instead of you committing resources to a specific object to determine how powerful its effect is? For example, a lot of Pokemon will have 2 attacks. One of them will cost cheap, one of them will be expensive. How invested you are in that particular Pokemon is how good the attack's going to be. That is the kind of thing that we are looking at. How can we take that concept and translate it into something else, maybe more like a Tableau builder? So our core brief is examining a committed... There's going to be a lot of typing noises in this video, and also I have a fan on because it's really hot today, so my apologies. I'm doing the best I can. Energy / resource type system. Awesome. So this is kind of our main thing, right? And the idea that I had starting out was that we want it to be a Tableau builder, mostly because that's my wheelhouse. If given any designer any particular challenge, they tend to design things that fall in line with their catalog, their lived experience. This is not a surprise. Tableau builder is a lot of the one that I kind of work on. Cutlass is a Tableau builder. Castles of Clare is a Tableau builder. And this is kind of the same thing that I'm thinking. I do have an initial vision in mind in coming into this video. That was the whole point of turning on the camera. But we're doing a Tableau builder. We're going to have multiple different abilities, effects that an object can have, and then you are committing resources to that object so that it can activate. And then differently from Cutlass, which is programmatical, it activates from right to left. We're just going to have it where you can just exhaust things and use them whenever, and they're all going to accumulate in something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we're looking at a Tableau builder. Objects have effects with resource costs. It's probably enough to get started. My goal is to make this a just cards and then like maybe tracking dice thing, and ideally something that fits in a tuck box, so like a 1 deck between 2 players is kind of the ideal. So we're gonna try and use that. Let's just say 60 cards to start with, maybe some dice. Set up shared deck, both players draw from. Opening hand size is something we need to determine, and then we're going to look at steps of a turn to get started. I'm kind of just like running through. These are all kind of sections that I use when I run through stuff. Oftentimes I'll leave something incomplete and then come back to it when I have more ideas about how it's supposed to work, but I'm like, I need to know what these things are going to be. I need to know what the components are going to be, because I potentially have to manufacture it in the end. If something is impossible to create and turn into a product, then this just becomes an exercise of the mind, which is fine, but building stuff with the correct end goal in mind means that as you walk the path becomes more clear to you, which is kind of the goal. It's what practice is supposed to do. You don't practice for the exam, you practice for real life. That's the point. Okay, so looking at steps of a turn, we're looking at a dichotomy between Magic the Gathering and Pokemon TCG. Magic the Gathering says you are gated into how many cards you can play, actions you can perform, based on how many resources you have. So do we, like the Pokemon TCG, instead want to create a thing where it's like, here are categories of card, and innately they are limited to how and when you can play them. For example, supporters, you can only play one per turn, unless if you're going first, in which you cannot play one. Energy, you can only attach one from hand per turn, but there is effects that will accelerate and do that faster. But then items you can do any number of times. And I'm currently unsure as to how many card types I want to have. I'm thinking everything is one card type, but anything can be spent as a resource. So you're like, okay, this card doesn't fit my synergy, I'm going to spend it as a resource instead, and that's kind of the goal. But I think we also want to have color identities as well, so that specific cards require specific color identities to be able to do stuff, I guess. We'll figure out how that goes. That's going to be really rough in a shared deck type thing, unless if the number of colors is low, so maybe 3 colors is maybe the way to go. So steps of a turn, we might come back to. We'll just skip down a little bit and we'll go card types, and then like maybe a list of card effects, which I'll come back to. But steps of the turn, we're probably going to start with drawing a card, readying exhausted. In Pokemon, when you attack, it ends your turn. With this, obviously, we want to be able to activate more than one thing, so we don't want it to be ending your turn. So we're going to use an exhausted, unexhausted system. So it's basically going to be the same as untap, draw, and then how many things do we want? We're just going to play one card. You're going to have a limited number of effect activations. I think kind of goes against the point of building something. So you're going to pick from attaching a resource. Now I'm intentionally trying to be generic with terminology because I don't know what the theme's going to be. If we picked like a, I don't know, ice core drilling theme, then drills are probably going to be the objects that we're playing, and then I don't know, electricity, oil, I don't know what the fuck an ice core drill is powered by would be the resources that we're attaching to it. Great fucking analogy choice, by the way. I have no idea what an ice core drill looks like. But yeah, I think attaching the one resource is fine because it means that if we allow the player ways to accelerate more objects in play, they're gated by how successfully they can attach the right type of resource. And I like the idea of having the colorless as powered by anything, but then more powerful and more specific effects require specific colors or combinations of colors. As we're seeing in the Pokemon TCG at the moment, there is a large cycle of cards that require 3 unique different colored things in order to make something happen. And so that effect has to be kind of super powerful, which I think is fine. I think that is also something we can potentially be doing. Activate a card in Tableau by exhausting it. So that means that if something, for example, Pokemon cards which have 2 attacks, when you attack, you're choosing one of them and it ends your turn. I'm thinking something similar where you go, okay, I'm going to use this Ice Core drill. We're going to use the Mega Super Giga Drilling mode, the second more powerful attack that needs 15 energy or whatever. And then it's exhausted, which means I can't use the cheap one as well. I can't use any other abilities on that card. I'm picking between them and how invested I am in each individual thing, which I think is fine. But according to this, that means that we could only do it once, activate any card one time and exhaust it. Up to once in any order. So activate each card. Each card can be activated once. Activate each readied. I'm like unexhausted. Each readied card in Tableau by exhausting it. I think that is fine. So now this is literally just attach energy to Pokemon and then Pokemon can attack. I do like the idea of having something like a supporter, which is like your big haymaker thing. Pokemon TCG does a really good job of separating powerful supporter effects with item effects, where like a lot of supporters have your energy acceleration. A lot of them have really good card draw effects and opponent card draw limiting effects, like Iona. I can go to 6, you can go to 1. I want to have something that does that feeling. I think the goal of this is to build something that a Pokemon TCG player will pick up and go, oh yeah, totally, I get how this all happens. And then have that same feeling of, I like Lost Zone Box is a good example. We're like, okay, I have my Comfy in the active, I activate it to do my card advantage. I then play a card that allows me to switch in a new Comfy and activate it. But the one on the bench is exhausted, has been used already. And the one on the active, we're going to do again to do more card advantage. And they're kind of looping through this sequence of abilities. I want to try and recreate that same feeling where you're like, okay, I'm going to attach energy to this one because it needs 1 to activate. I'm then going to activate it, it's going to do a thing. And I have this other one that costs nothing that I can do every turn as well. And so stuff like that is kind of what I want. But then, I don't know, play 1 supporter card. We're just going to put it in quotes because I'm going to adjust it to match whatever the theme's going to be. When it's going to be like a haymaker. And if we're playing a 60 card deck between 2 players, it means that we want to have a certain amount of haymakers that are going to work for either player, for multiple different strategies, that kind of thing. So they're going to need to be relatively generic. This is also worth thinking about. I'm assuming it's going to be some kind of points accumulation thing, which I think is fine. Ostensibly, it's an engine builder currently, which I think is okay. Pokemon TCG does play a little bit like an engine builder, except it's charge dump. You're like, okay, I'll spend this time setting up, and then bang, hit you with a big attack. Oh, you knocked out my guy? Cool, I have to charge again so that I can bang, hit you with another attack. But like the overlap between how far it took me to get to my first thing, was I able to start setting up the second thing before you knocked out my first guy, and so on. Like how much of a lead in my Tableau can I generate, which I think is fine. I think that's kind of what we want here. So win conditions is probably going to be collected points in some way. Collected points, I think that's fine. Is I don't know, that needs to be specified. I want to have some cards that have end your turn. I really like Rotom V as an example here, where it's like Rotom V has an ability that doesn't cost any energy or anything, but it says draw 3 cards, your turn ends. So I want to have some stuff kind of like that. There's also ones like I think it's Zacian V, War of the Sword, which is like search your deck for an energy, attach it, and then your turn ends. So I want to have a couple of things like that as well. I do like them. And then the other thing is we need to determine how many different unique copies of a card fits into the 60 cards. So I think we'll have like a pyramid tiered thing where it's like the haymakers, the really powerful stuff are going to be at the top. And then like a lot of the things that just help you set up the system, a lot of them. Because early on they'll be really strong, trying to help you set up, and then later on you can just be like, oh, this is energy, this is energy, this is energy, which I think is okay. So I think this is fine for right now. And then I really like the format of the Pokemon turn, right? Magic the Gathering is really complicated because you can repeat a lot of the same phases and do a lot of the same things. Whereas Pokemon is kind of like, I draw my card, I do as many fucking possible actions, and then I either attack, I use something that ends my turn, or I pass. I think that's fine. I think I'm looking at this going, what's the thing that ends my turn? How do I end my turn? That could come into theme as well. If we think of something like a tower defense game, there's a few tower defense type games where you're building defenses and then also you're sending guys that like run at your opponent's defenses, and then like your turn ending is you sending your guys over to fight. We can do something like that. Something that is going to tie in towards getting points. I really like the idea of fighting neutral monsters, kind of like what Ascension has, where it's like I'm doing my deck building thing, but if I want to score quick points, I can just use attack power and just punch some of the neutral guys to collect points that way, which I think is also possibly fine. It does mean that these will be cards that are not in the deck and would increase the size of the product, which I think is okay for you to have like a 20 card, 40 card deck of just monsters or something that have different effects that affect both players. And then you get to punch them, which I think is fine. I think let's just start with that, and then if I hate it, I will scrap it. So let's, and then end your turn by spending attack power, damaging a neutral monster. I think that's fine. Collected points by defeating neutral monsters. Do I want players to be able to punch each other? Possibly. And deal, like Cutlass has a system where if stuff takes damage, then it's stunned and you need to spend resources to repair it. I'm okay with including something like that, because if you have attack power and you're spending it all on fight a neutral monster, but it's not fatal, and the neutral monster is sitting there with some damage on it, your opponent can just go oink and then collect the points, which is really shit. But if you can potentially disable their thing that is going to be generating their attack power, then maybe they won't be able to hit it back. They're going to spend time recovering, and then you can punch it. So I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure. So card types, we're going to have neutral monsters. You're going to have the things that you are building, which is going to be like structures, towers, that kind of thing. We are then going to have the supporters, which I like the idea, like war heroes or whatever. Ascension has like people characters, but they're like heroes, right? It's just this fabled hero of legend comes and does a thing. I like the idea of something like that. Okay, and so we're gonna have 3 colors of card: red, blue, brown, green. A real nice RGB for 3 different factions, and that means that different things that attack require these different 3 types, and so each of them will be like highly synergistic with itself. So you go, oh, I'm going to lean really high into green, but if my opponent's running a lot of green cards, maybe I should start looking at other stuff, and things like that. Maybe that'll work. It also means we can have a bunch of stuff like in-betweens, so there'll be like a bunch of red and blue things, so you can commit red and blue cards to it. but each card is going to have a color identity. Let's say this card is red, but it might have blue clustered things in the attack, which makes it between the two. But if it is a red card, then when you commit that card as a resource to something, you are adding a red energy to that thing. That's the goal. To not have specifically different energy cards and playable cards and cards with effects and shit. Just specifically wanting everything to be able to power each other up, and then you're going, okay, this card is useless now, I'm going to spend it. Which is kind of the same as like a lot of Magic the Gathering type games, which you're like, I'm just committing a card from my hand to be one of my energy, doesn't matter what it is. I believe Lorcana and Dragon Ball Super and Altered TCG do this, which is fine. It's kind of a lazy fix, I think. It doesn't inherently solve the problem, but at least with this, you're pairing up objects. You're not, building out your resources. It's going to determine every action you can possibly take. With this, you're like, okay, my thing needs a red, and if I have a red, it says I draw a card. And cool, I'll take my red thing that does nothing, and then I'll draw a card when I activate it. That's kind of the goal. Well, we have some stuff. Like, we have some ideas, right? We have some things kind of started. What I'm going to do is open up Photoshop. And you can see how horrible my green screen is. Maybe if I turn this up a little bit. That did nothing. Alright, I tried. So I use 825, 1125 because that is the Game Crafter's default size for poker standard cards. I design all of the cards that I use using this size, not specifically because I always want to use the Game Crafter for stuff, but because it's just the right ratio for a poker card. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to block out some stuff. I'm just going to go like this is art. Just want to rename it. Card art. It's vanished because it is white. I did not want for it to be white. Let's just make it red for now. Very helpful. Well, it's yellow, I guess. Actually, it's not very helpful. Let's make it red instead. Cool. We have a card art frame. That's fine. I think each thing having two different abilities, attacks, is whatever. So let's just make 2 boxes for that. And then we're just gonna go like, this is the title. You can see I have everything loaded up for me making thumbnails. Title, card art. Border color. Border color is kind of an important one. Yep, that's how you spell that. Oh my god. I wanted to control A, so I'm gonna make it smaller. Not that small. Just so it doesn't get confused with the title. Here we go, border color. Yes, I'm Australian, yes, that's how it's spelled. Let me move title so it's a bit less confusing. What the hell? Get what? Okay. Then we have card art, and then we have why? Go to hell. We're gonna make all these an object. I don't know why clicking on stuff is bringing that up like that. I just want to include text. We're going to do small ability, big ability. I'm just gonna have like the cast. So in Magic the Gathering, you have W, U, B, R, G, and then C for colorless. There's blue and black, so U is blue. And then in Pokemon TCG, you have C, L, M, G, R, etc. There's like 9 of them. And so here, the small ability is much more likely to be colorless, but like if we're doing the big one, which you probably can't see because my shoulder is in the way, there we go. RRC is like red colorless. Which I think makes sense. Like, look, if I can make 3 cards to this thing, and that's kind of like really generic, right? This is exactly what the Pokemon card layout is, right? And then if we're taking it to be exactly that, and it's going to be really translatable. Obviously, we'll have different graphic design things. And again, I'm not saying I'm specifically making this game. This is just a theater of the mind thing where I'm having a look at what would go into such a thing. But the last thing I want to have a look at is what are some options of different card effects. And we can always look to the Pokemon TCG for some of this stuff, but also a lot of other tableau building type games. The easiest one is going to be draw a card. That's a really simple, small ability one. We can also have filter a card. Magic has scry, which is like look at the top one, put on the bottom, then draw a card. Or we can have something like Dracloak from Pokemon TCG, which is look at the top 2 cards, put one in your hand, put one on the bottom. There's a few different options there for filtering a card. I'm not going to specify right now, but picking between one of those is probably fine. Leaving something on top is particularly bad because your opponent's going to be drawing from the same deck, so you want to avoid that where possible. Energy from top of deck. So in the Pokemon TCG, a lot of energy acceleration is taking an energy card from the discard pile and attaching it to one of your Pokemon on the bench usually. With this one, I like the idea instead of accelerating energy from the top of the deck. So you would look at the top card of the deck, you go, cool, it's green. I have a green thing that needs a green energy, and I have a red thing that needs a green energy, or I have a blue thing that just needs a colorless. I'm going to choose which one of these guys is going to collect that energy, and it can get attached to it that way, which I think is fine. Accelerating from top of the deck gives you like a small lottery kind of vibe, which I think is okay. I also need to figure out exactly how supporter type cards are going to work, but that's probably possibly some of these things. The other one we need is generate attack power. This will probably be like a token thing or a dice managed thing where you go, okay, if I exhaust this, I generate this much attack power. And then you can spend all of your cumulative attack power to deal damage to the neutral monster. Or, you know, deal damage to your opponent's things to stun them. Which I also think is fine. Generating attack power is going to be one of the major things. There might be other stuff that's just like really expensive and just gets you points, which is fine. Then we want stuff that slows down your opponent. So we can have stun enemy cards. So Magic the Gathering has a thing which is literally stun counters, which just means that they don't untap, and they remove a stun counter instead, and if there's no stun counters, then it untaps. So the more stun counters, the longer time it's stuck tapped. I think something like that is fine, where if you deal damage to a thing, a certain damage threshold is going to say it's stunned for this amount of time, which I think works fine. I'm trying to think of what kind of player interaction I want to have that isn't incredibly detrimental. With Cutlass and the development of Cutlass, there was the thing where it was just like, you deal enough damage to one of your opponent's things in the tablet, it dies, it's removed, you score points. Which was fucked because as soon as you started removing stuff from your opponent's tableau, you won the game. I mean, you just kind of locked them out from ever playing the game just by dealing damage to stuff. It was kind of horrible. So I moved it more to a stun thing because you could commit resources to readying your stuff and repairing it, and then it not being stunned. Or you can just be like, look, I don't need it. I'll leave it and I'll come to it later. Which I think works fine. It's a rather elegant solution. Pokemon TCG, if you have damage on your guys, you do have some Pokemon abilities that will remove damage, but you can also do stuff like just straight up discard them, or there's a few supporters that will pick up things and put it in your hand. So maybe remove stun counters, move energy around. One of the major strategies in Pokemon TCG at the moment is moving energy around with energy switch or scramble switch. So if we have specific cards that will accelerate to a specific target, and then more specific cards that move energy around. So what we might do is we might actually go, what are the 3 wheelhouses, right? Red, green, blue. So red is going to be attack power as one of its main things. Blue can be energy acceleration. Card filtering. No, you can't really see much of this. I'm trying to read the whole list. I think everything should have an draw card, like cost colorless, which is fine. I like the idea of green. On top of deck. Swap this. Let's go like supporter search. And then red, eating opponent's cards for energy, because every card has a colored border. Every card can be used as an energy for something. So I can turn my opponent's cards into energy if I want. It's more likely to be cards in hand than cards in play. Cards in play is a bit punishing. I think that's fine. Eating opponent's cards in hand for energy. Card filtering. Supporter search, I think is fine. I think blue, like I'm really using a lot of the I want to have more ways to generate points than just defeating neutral monsters, which is probably something will come through more development. But picking what the 3 wheelhouses are going to be and finding key identity for each of them, and then going and designing a bunch of cards that fit within those wheelhouses, and then what is a green-blue card going to look like? What is a red-green card going to look like? Stuff like that. What are the different supporters going to look like with the different colors? How is a green supporter going to differ from a blue supporter? And then generating a deck of cards. I like the idea of 60. It's just kind of the right size for players to shuffle it easy. And then it's like looking at what exactly the length and breadth of what all the different effects are, and the rest of it's maths. So it's like, is this too much? An example from Cutlass, there's a card which says draw 1 card, your opponent loses the top card of their deck forever. And any other combination of numbers was game breaking. Losing 2 cards was too much, drawing 2 cards was too much. And so it just had to be 1 and 1, and then if that just means it's mediocre, that's fine, because any more than that, it's broken and it's too powerful. So I think working on the maths and playing through it and then play testing and then finding out a way for it to work, I think it's fine. I don't know if this is something I'm going to tinker with for a while. I do like the idea of it. It was kind of picking at me today while I was thinking about stuff, working on things. Trying to use that attached energy experience from the Pokemon TCG, but in a Tableau builder. That was kind of the idea. I used to do a lot of game design content on the channel, but it doesn't always super perform really well. Because I think it's just like a really big niche, even though it was literally the whole point why I kind of started the channel, was to go, hey, look, I fucking make games. That's the thing I do. Here's some of the ideas that I'm working on. Here's how it kind of works. If you would like to make games, here's some of the ideas of how I'm doing stuff and some skills I can try and teach you. Whether or not that's worked out or not is hard to say, but I just do too much other stuff on the YouTube channel now. So if you are interested in me working on this game some more, if you're really curious to see how it might work out, let me know in the comments. Hit the buttons. If the numbers get big, then I go, wow, this is a really cool idea. I'll do more of this. And then if I do work on this tomorrow, I'll come back, I'll show it off. Maybe we'll have some graphic design done for a card template. Maybe I'll, build out something, and I'll build out a prototype and show off how it's supposed to work and stuff like that. So if you're curious about that stuff in the future, stick around, get on the channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Every YouTuber is contractually obligated to say this, but I'm special and different, I guess. I don't know. Look, stick around. I want to be making more cool stuff like this to go alongside a lot of the playing games kind of content that I do. So let me know, and hopefully I'll have more cool stuff for you coming up.